And now, Parija Chakrabarti, India lead for Public Affairs, Corporate Reputation, ESG and CSR at Ipsos, and a core part of the MRSI committee, will introduce the next power-packed session.
Hello, friends, colleagues, me again. But this time to introduce another very important person for our today's sessions, and you can say one of the star attractions of today. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce the head of Global CMI Unilever, Vijay Raj. You all know him. He joined Unilever about 25 years back, and been there in many places. He moved location some 8 times during his time with Unilever and has worked across India, Indonesia, Singapore, and the UK. He's at present based out of Singapore with his wife and 2 boys. Apart from being a distinguished leader in his professional career, he is equally serious about running marathons. This part many of us didn't know. He runs marathons as a hobby, and I have written it down so that I don't make a mistake of how many. And he has done 37 half marathons, 12 full marathons, and 1 ultra marathon. I'm sure he will be happy to know that MRSI is taking initiatives around sports, and we are trying to improve our fun and fitness quotient better for the industry. Vijay, the stage is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vijay with a round of applause.
Great, thanks for that. So look, I have the task of standing between you and the bars, so I'll try and keep this brief. And I was asked to sum up and sort of summarize today's sessions, and for that simple reason, you will not see any slides. And I did start the day by making copious notes on each of the presentations, but I very quickly realized that it's going to be a bit of a fool's errand to try and summarize the wonderful presentations that have already been made. So I'm not going to try and do that, but instead what I'll do is I'll take a bit of a helicopter view of what I heard during the course of today. And before I do that, a bit of a context. And I, in my mind, have a mental framework of how research and insights works, and really in my mind it works at 3 levels. At the base level is all about identifying wow insights. This is all about having robust tools, systems, processes, all combined with an incredible intuition to actually identify those wow insights. You then move to the next level, which is all about insight into action. And here, very simply put, this is moving away from doing market research to marketing the research. This is about engaging stakeholders with the insights to move from awareness to consideration to actually acting upon it. And then at the highest level is about insight to transformation. And again, very simply put, as an industry, we've fought very hard over the past few decades to have a seat at the table. But this is all about not just having a seat at the table, but actually creating not a different table, but actually creating a new party, a party where you foster different kinds of connections. So that's the kind of mental construct that I use. And with that mental construct, when I looked at today was spent at the base level, which is super important because finding wow insights is really the foundation on which we can build up to the other 2 levels. And it is super important. So with that, there were really 5 themes that I kind of noted today. The first was about embracing AI to improve our efficiency and our effectiveness. So there was the paper from TNS which talked about using Qual AI, using AI in Qual to actually parse through scripts which were as voluminous as an entire novel. Now that's something that a qual researcher could do, but it would probably take a few days, probably even a few weeks to get through. But that's something that potentially was done in the course of a few minutes. So an example of using AI for efficiency. But there are also great examples of using AI for effectiveness. So think about the work that was shown by Knowledge Excel, which is all about getting better quality data by ironically using technology to provide a human touch. Which was missing when we moved from face-to-face interviews to Cavi and Cassie interviews. Then there was also the wonderful example from ITC Foods, where they used AI not just to identify trends, but actually to create concepts and then to validate those ideas. That's again an example of using AI to impact effectiveness. Now, AI is here, and it is for us to embrace it. And fighting AI is a bit like going back to the mid to late 90s and trying to fight the use of computers. Why? Because I've got a typist who can do that for me. That's missing the entire point of the technology and the power that it has to offer to us. Yeah? Now, for me, I know that there is a worry in the industry that AI will take away jobs, but I don't share that worry. Why? Because I look at AI as being augmented intelligence, which is the power of artificial intelligence combined with the power of human intelligence. And therefore, it is my belief that AI will not take away our jobs, but if we do not engage with AI, then somebody else who is using AI will take away our jobs. Yeah? So therefore, that was the first theme, which is embracing AI to increase not just efficiency, but also effectiveness. The second theme was all about building a holistic understanding, and that really had three dimensions that came through. The first was using a whole range of different tools to really try to unpack the issue. Good example of that was what Pooja and the Kellogg's team showed, using product benchmarking, using social listening, using qual research, using one-on-one interviews, direct consumer contact, using all of it to build a much better understanding of what the issues and opportunities are. Second dimension is around fusing different data sources to actually create a much better understanding of where things are. And there was an example from Flipkart, and there was another example from Airtel, which are good examples of fusing different data sources to actually create a model that is arguably much more robust. And finally, there is the aspect of looking at things through the lens of different stakeholders. Yeah? And there's a good example from the ITC Foods team, which looked at not just children and parents, but looked at it through other lenses of school teachers and child psychologists. And all of this is important. Why? Because it helps us look at the totality of the mix, but it also helps us to explore different perspectives. Yeah? Because if I were making a presentation and there were a slide behind me, I'd have to say, look at the left of the screen, and then I have to clarify whether it's my left or your left. And both of those are correct. It's just a matter of how you look at it. So that was the second theme, which then leads on to the third theme, which I'd say is all about embracing contradictions and resolving the contradictions. Yeah? And I'm going to sort of paraphrase F. Scott Fitzgerald, who once said something to the effect of genius is the ability to hold contrarian thoughts. Yeah? Now, in the world of research, this is something that we encounter almost on a daily basis. So one of the questions that marketing is looking to us to answer is, do influencers work? Now, on the one hand, you can say, yes, they work. Why? Because you look at the fact that suddenly you've got this whole bunch of young, able-bodied people who are developing kidney stones. Why? Because they've taken to this wellness trend that influencers have been peddling, which is around taking a cold shower in ice. Yeah? That is resulting in kidney stones getting formed. Now, you can look at it and say, hey, look, that is the proof that you need about the fact that influencers are working. But hold on a minute. Let's think back to the US elections. Yeah? And you think back to the fact that Kamala Harris had the backing of every single big influencers. The biggest of the big, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, Rihanna, all of them endorsed Kamala Harris. If the election were determined by the number of followers, and if every one of their followers had voted for Kamala Harris, she would have won, and yet she did not. So is that a proof point about the fact that influencers do not work? So do they work? Do they not work? And the answers are obviously much more nuanced than that. Yeah? And there was a good example from the ITC Foods team on the noodles example, which looked at the contradiction between health and taste, and actually resolved that contradiction through the use of behavioral nudges. So I think in the world of research and insights, we could take F. Scott Fitzgerald's quote and kind of modify it to say that, genius researcher is one who not just has the ability to spot contradictions, but has the ability to unravel it and actually to resolve it. Yeah. So that's the third. So the first was around embracing AI to increase efficiency and effectiveness. Second is around building a holistic understanding. The third was around embracing and resolving contradictions. The fourth for me was around identifying new sources of insights. Now, as an industry, we were born on the shoulders of both the qualitative research as well as surveys, which is basically all about asking people. From there, we have evolved and we have added to our armory the whole bit about observing behavior. So, asking and observing. And within the bucket of observing, I include the entire gamut of, facial coding, pupil dilation, measurement, eye tracking, all the rest of it. Yeah. But those are the primary sources of insights, but we need to go beyond that. Now, I'll give you an example, a personal example. So, if you were to ask me today, what are the problems that I encounter with shaving, I would say none. If you come and observe me shaving, find probably a pretty normal, boring shaving routine. But does that mean there are no opportunities in the shaving industry? No. And, if you go to Google search trends and if you look at, if you type problems with shaving or how to shave, you'll realize that some of the related questions are around how do I shave my armpits? How do I shave hair from my back? How do I deal with hair in private parts? Those are all things that people would either be unaware of or would find very difficult to articulate. And yet, they're giving us that information in what they're searching for in Google. So I was very glad to see Google search being incorporated by the Kantar team alongside the attitudinal measures like affinity and alongside the behavioral measure of penetration. And also good to see social data being incorporated in a number of different papers. So that's one dimension. But I think the other aspect of it is, I have a belief that cultural insights are extremely important, and popular media is really a very rich source of insights. And within popular media, I include memes, I include serials, and I include movies. Yeah. So the team from Blue Litmus talked about memes as a source of insight, and I can tell you anecdotally that last week my Instagram reel was flooded literally with reels of people complaining about floods. Yeah. And most of the memes that I saw was all about flooding and real estate agents trying to set up viewings in the midst of that. And I see that as a sign of people just complaining about overzealous real estate agents and about the crumbling infrastructure. Similarly, you talk about movies, and again, pop culture for me is a reflection, a mirror to current reality, but it's also a window into the potential future. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw two movies in the same day. First was a movie called Do Aur Do Pyar, and the second was a movie called Santosh. Now, if anyone of you have seen those movies, Do Aur Do Pyar was about a young couple, double income, no kids, very affluent. Now, double income, no kids is a new phenomenon. And I read a stat that 29% of households in India are now double income, no kids. I don't have a way of verifying that, but it does tell me that it is something that is happening. Now, the thing about this movie was that both the husband and the wife were having extramarital affairs. Now, that surely is not a reflection of current reality, though for a number of married people in this room, it might be aspirational. Yeah. Now, I do not want to comment upon that laugh, but what I will say is that it certainly is a reflection of the changing household structure and the changing notion of loyalty and the changing notion that once you are married, you're married for, and you will live with the person until such time that death does you apart. On the other hand, the next movie that I watched was Santosh. Now, this is a movie of a young woman. She's a widow, lives in small town India. She's a police officer, but she's also a member of a lower caste. And therefore, it really shows the struggles that she has and how society really doesn't give her her just due. Yeah? And you can say that is a contradiction, and that's really the contradiction that Ramki talked about. And it provides a great insight and a great fertile territory for marketers to really tap into. Yeah? So that's the fourth theme around, let's start to look for new sources of insights. And the fifth and the final theme is around, let's start to create models and frameworks that are both more predictive, and more future-proofed. And those are two different dimensions. So let's start with predictive. So I really like the paper from Airtel, where they took NPS, the metric NPS, which is really much maligned within the world of marketing. Why? Because it really means nothing, it predicts nothing. And yet what they did is they added onto it new variables and created a new metric, contextualized NPS, which now predicts churn. Now that is predictive, that is useful information that the business can act upon. Yeah. Similarly, today a lot of the frameworks that we create are pretty static. Yeah? So you think about consumer journeys, you think about demand spaces, they're all a reflection at a point in time. So if you were working in an FMCG company and 2 years ago you did a consumer journey study, you'd been very happy with it, got lots of kudos, done lots of actions with it, but then you blinked and 2 years later, it is completely useless. Why? Because blink it happened. And all the entire consumer purchase journey went out of the window. Yeah? Think about demand spaces and the fact that it describes how people consume, why they consume at a certain point in time, but that can get disrupted by technology. And that technology need not just be in the form of a new app. It could be something as simple as GLP-1 drugs, which suddenly become very popular overnight, change eating habits, but then they have a knock-on impact on how your body looks, what kind of clothes you wish to wear, etc., etc. So how do we start to develop frameworks that are based on underlying dimensions and underlying vectors that are both durable in terms of time periods, but are also more predictive? Now, I know I'm running out of time, so I'll use a very simple example, which is, I wake up in the morning and I very religiously stand on the weighing machine. And I have a pair of twin boys who are very stubborn, and I have a weighing machine which is very stubborn and refuses to go down. Yeah? But I'm measuring the wrong thing, and I'm measuring using a very static phenomenon. What I really should be measuring is my sleep pattern, my diet, and my exercise pattern. And if I change those, then the weighing machine will change. Yeah? But I can also start to predict what might happen to the weighing machine once I start to know what's happening to these three factors. So how do we start to create frameworks that are both predictive and also future-proofed? So in summary, those are the 5 themes that I picked out from today. First, the need to embrace AI to increase our effectiveness and our efficiency. It's not either or, it's effectiveness and efficiency. Second is building a more holistic understanding through different dimensions. The third, the need to embrace and resolve contradictions. The fourth is all around finding new sources of insights. And the fifth is around making our frameworks more predictive and more future focused. So those are the 5 big themes that I picked out. And I must say that in conclusion that I know that the theme for today is the power of and, but I do at the end of the day believe it's actually the imperative of and, because it is not a choice. But you know what? Today technology allows us to get away from the tyranny of or. We don't have to make the choice. We can embrace the and. Thank you.